So maybe you've been meditating for a while and you feel inspired somehow in your meditation to change your practice in some way. You might want to change the mantra that you use. Maybe you tweak the technique in some way, maybe radically change the practice that you're doing. So is this coming from the ego or is it coming from the inner guru? That is a question that a lot of different people ask me. And so let's take a look at what the inner guru actually is. Now, there's a few possibilities. One is that the inner guru is kind of a compilation of all the teachings that you've been taught by your teacher or maybe have read in different spiritual books. And it's kind of sitting there in memory as a touchstone. And then maybe in meditation, something comes together in a new way and you find yourself inspired to do something different. Or even just you gain some insight. Now, that indeed could be the beginning of the inner guru. But let's dig a little deeper into seeing what's kind of underlying that inspiration. Like, where is that inspiration coming from? It's not just the information that you already had, or nothing new would come from it. It's something underlying that. So there's this beautiful analogy or metaphor in the Upanishads that I like to use, and it's the metaphor of the banyan seed. And basically it goes like this. And the banyan tree is a huge tree, and yet the seed is very small. And if you break open the seed, you find that it's hollow. It's empty in the middle of the seed. And so the metaphor is like this, that within that emptiness is contained the whole tree in unmanifest form. So all the roots, the branches, the trunk, the leaves, the flowers, everything is contained within that unmanifested state, within, the hollowness of the banyan seed. Like that, when we meditate, we transcend even the faintest impulse of a thought, and we're sitting in that state of emptiness. And yet we're still aware, so it's a state of pure awareness, unbounded awareness, infinite awareness, absolute emptiness, okay? So that is the hollowness, so to speak, at the core of our being. And that same physics has found that there's a similar kind of hollowness or emptiness, the quantum field vacuum state, at the basis of everything, from which all the subatomic particles manifest. So this idea of hollowness or emptiness being at the source of everything is one that's not only been around for thousands of years in spiritual traditions, but even science is starting to recognize it. So the point is that is within you. And within that unmanifest state is all knowledge of the whole creation, because the creation comes from there. So just like the banyan seed, the tree comes from that hollowness in the seed, the whole creation comes from that hollowness, the quantum field vacuum state, that state of pure awareness of emptiness at the core of your being. So if you're starting to have some clear experience of that state, then it's entirely possible that inspiration is coming directly from that state. And that is the inner guru. Another way of looking at that, it's very interesting, like in some tantric traditions, for instance, that emptiness, that unmanifested state of pure consciousness is considered to be Shiva. And Shiva is also the Lord of the yogis. He's ever absorbed in himself. So he's the Lord of the yogis, and also in many of the stories, he is the reservoir of all the knowledge of yogic techniques and practices. All the techniques for transcending, Shiva is the master of those. And often you'll find stories where he is teaching Parvati, his consort, or spouse, he's teaching her these techniques. So you could say that inner guru is Shiva. That is within you. It's also your higher self. And from there can come all kinds of teachings. And the interesting thing is, you may have a sense when you get teachings from this inner guru, clearly, you may have a sense it's coming from your teacher, who is either alive or no longer on this earth. Maybe you have a sense that it's coming from an ascended master, or someone in a lineage of teachers who's been ascended for many decades or even centuries. You may feel it's coming from Christ. It all depends on your idea, your faith, your conception. The point is, all of these beings who have ever existed, either in reality or even simply in story, in legend, exist in consciousness. And so whoever that source of those teachings is for you, it's going to be 100% accurate, because you're manifesting that. Basically, you're manifesting that. In truth, it's all coming from your higher self, your inmost self. So that is what the ultimate meaning of inner guru is. And it is absolutely true that you can gain all kinds of knowledge from that state. And in fact, you'll gain not only knowledge of spiritual knowledge. Of course, yogis who are very devoted to their practice, they start to get this clarity of that inner consciousness. They're going to get knowledge that they're interested in, knowledge about spiritual practice. So they get these beautiful techniques, and it can start whole traditions of practice based on their cognitions from within their own self. So, but there are other examples. There's a beautiful movie called The Man Who Knew Infinity, Srinivasa Ramanujan. And he was a brilliant mathematician, far beyond any of the mathematicians of his day, even the greatest in the world. And he was completely self-taught, an autodidactic mathematician, raised in a ghetto in India, had very little or no formal education of mathematics, certainly none in higher mathematics. And yet through his self-teaching, he excelled the greatest mathematicians in the world, and in his insights. And clearly, he had access. Where did he get that knowledge? He must have had access to that state of the hollow within the banyan seed, that state of unmanifest pure consciousness. And so even, this is how it works actually, you have something, an interest. Maybe you read something in a book. It's enough to get you started. And if you feel a passion for that, and you have access to that innermost aspect of pure consciousness, then it's as if that interest that you have starts to tickle that pure consciousness, and the knowledge will start to flow, and more will come. You may start to have just a flood of transcendent knowledge about that area of interest that you have. And you'll just be drenched in knowledge. And clearly this was the case for Srinivasa Ramanujan in mathematics. He must have been a highly advanced yogi in a previous life. There's just no question about that. Otherwise, where did that come from? He, in fact, even talks about it seeming to come from like the mind of God. And so that was within him. And you'll find, as you continue your practice, this kind of experience of, another name for it is the Akashic records. Akasha means space. But certainly it's not just space, it's the space of consciousness. We have knowledge within consciousness. And so it's the Akasha, the space of consciousness, Chidakasha it's called, that all knowledge is contained in that state of Chidakasha. And so if we access that, we're accessing the so-called Akashic records within us. This is a Vedic conception that predated the Theosophical Society and their ideas about, quote, the Akashic records by many thousands of years. So it's just a fact of life. That hollowness contains all knowledge. So getting back to whether you should trust your intuitions, that's really going to be up to you. Does it enhance your experience? Does it really significantly, move you forward? Or does it lead you to a dead end where you feel confused and you don't know what to do? If you end up in that confusion, you should definitely go back to your teacher or a teacher and get some help. Definitely take advantage of teachers who've been practicing for 30, 40, 50 years or more, who maybe have this clarity and can help you. But if you're starting to find that knowledge is just coming to you in your meditations or even outside of your meditations, and you just feel that clear flow of inspiration and knowledge that enhances your experience tremendously, then you can trust that that is coming from the so-called inner guru, which is ultimately your higher self. Om Namah Shivaya.